Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Loria Yeadon, the President and CEO of the YMCA of Greater Seattle. Welcome to you. On behalf of the leadership and staff of the Y and our community-led board of directors, we welcome you to Black Women on the Hill, a celebration of Black History Month. We're so glad you're here with us today to learn, grow, and make progress with us together. This afternoon, I began by acknowledging that many of us in attendance today in the Seattle area rest on the unceded ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish people from time immemorial. In this moment, we pause to give deference to the original stewards of these lands, past, present, and future. In this moment in our history, welcoming spaces where we can gather, acknowledge, learn, heal, and build a community of equity and justice for all are more important than ever. The Y is honored to convene and hold the space for community today. Learning from those with lived experiences is critically important to understand the challenges, trauma, barriers, and policies that must be identified, unpacked, and addressed to disrupt systemic racism. Today, we will learn together. Today, we will also celebrate with pride the accomplishments of Black women on the Hill. We're committed to removing institutional and systemic barriers that result in oppression and racism, especially in Black, Indigenous, and people of color youth, families, and communities. With humility, grace, and accountability, we are accountable and committed to rooting out racism and inequitable systems in our organization, wherever they may be. This is the hard work that must be done to disrupt and ultimately end racism. We invite you to do this hard work alongside of us and join us in learning and building a more inclusive community so that everyone, especially the young, can be unleashed and develop to their fullest potential in spirit, mind, and body. Today's webinar focuses on the voices of strong Black women in Olympia, representing their communities and leading the way on racial equity, policy reform, police reform, housing stability, healthcare access, childcare for working families, and investing in our communities. So just to give you a little flavor, here's a short video from the Washington State Legislature's Black Caucus. Let's roll film. That was powerful. So as we go into today's program, today we are so honored to have 4 of the 6 Black women elected to serve the Washington State Legislature on our panel today. And they include Representative April Berg, Representative Kirsten Harris-Talley, Representative Melanie Morgan, and Representative Jamila Taylor. Welcome to all 4 of you. Before we get into the conversation, I also wanted to acknowledge our other 2 Black women who serve on the legislature who could not join us today. Representative Deborah Entenman of the 47th District and Senator Twana Nobles of District 28. So in 1965, Representative Marjorie Pitter King made history as the first Black woman to serve in the Washington State Legislature. In 2020, 6 Black women were elected to the Washington State Legislature, tripling their representation in the State House that continues to be led predominantly by white male lawmakers. We have even more to celebrate with the historic confirmation of Kamala Harris as the highest ranking woman of color elected to office in our nation. So to our esteemed panelists, we are delighted that you're here with us today. If you would, please briefly introduce yourselves, your district and your community where you serve, and what you did before politics. And I know Representative Berg, if you want to go first, I know you have to drop off for a quick second, but if you'd like to go first and then come back to us, that would be great.
That would be wonderful. Thank you so much, Loria, and thank you to everyone out there watching today with the YMCA of Greater Seattle. My name's April Berg, Representative April Berg. It still sounds kind of weird to say that. And I am proud to be representing the 44th Legislative District. That includes Mill Creek, Lake Stevens, the city of Snohomish, a little bit of Marysville, and a little bit of Everett. We're a community that's just north of Seattle. And it's a beautiful part suburban and part rural community. I guess to tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a mom of 6 kiddos, 2 that have graduated at UW, 2 at Western, and 2 in high school. And I come from an education background. I currently sit on the Everett School Board, and I'm a previous school board member for the Edmond School District. As far as what I'm hoping to work on and do in the legislature this year, I'm really focusing on structural tax reform. I vice chair our finance committee, where I'm able to do a lot of chopping it up with folks when it comes to tax policy, but I also serve on the education committee as well as the local government committee. So just super happy to be here and happy to serve.
Thank you, welcome.
Thanks.
Next, let's go to Representative Harris-Talley.
Thank you so much, Loria and YMCA of Greater Seattle for hosting this today. It feels so amazing to be in this conversation in the middle of Black History Month. I'm Representative Kirsten Harris-Talley, she, her pronouns, and I represent the 37th District, which includes Renton, Skyway, and Southeast Seattle, and is the most diverse legislative district for now in Washington State. And I take that really seriously and think all the time about that diversity and how do we have good governance that meets the needs of all. I am from activism circles. I've worked in issues around economic justice, policing justice, and reproductive justice for a long time. So I thought about the question you asked of what did you do before politics? And I have to say, as a Black woman, I believe the personal is political. So I don't know that any of us have experienced life before politics moving through the world. And I'm really excited about this conversation and how we're going to talk about what that means right now. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, Representative Morgan.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for inviting me here in this space to share my experience. My name is Representative Melanie Morgan. I represent the 29th Legislative District, that is South Tacoma, parts of Lakewood, parts of Frederickson, Parkland, and Spanaway. And I do have to say that former Senator Rosa Franklin, 18 years ago, came from this district, the only Black woman serving then in the House and the Senate. So just wanted to give a shout out to her as well. But you know, I've been serving in my community through volunteering since I was 16. So this is just a natural part of me. I started with the Red Cross on PTA, lots of boards, ended up as a school board member, and then now as a legislator. But then also I have spent 4 years of my life in the U.S. Army. So I think service is at the core of me. I grew up in the military. I served in the military, and now I'm back with government serving the people. So it's apparent that I enjoy serving, and I'm really glad to be here today. I look forward to this conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Representative Taylor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I share that value of service. My name is Jamila Taylor, Representative. I forget to say Representative. That's my new first name, Representative Jamila Taylor. And I represent the 30th District, which is a bedroom community that is tucked between Seattle and Tacoma, which is Federal Way, Algona, Pacific, Milton, parts of Des Moines, parts of Auburn, and unincorporated King County, and a little bit of Pierce County. It is amazing to be here in this time with you all, representing not only the district, but the interests of Black people. As the chair of the Black Members Caucus, I am learning so much about the rich culture of our communities in new ways. I mean, you'd think that as an individual Black person, we know everything about all things Black. That's not true. We have so many diverse lived experiences. And even amongst the 9 members of the Black Members Caucus, we are diverse in ideas, political ideologies. Even though we are left to center, we have different approaches to solving our community's challenges. I am focusing on housing, and I serve as the vice chair of the Housing, Human Services, and Veterans Committee. I also serve on the Community and Economic Development Committee and Transportation. And being able to bring all those spheres together, it's a wonderful moment to ensure that we are really supporting the whole community and understanding the challenges that so many people are facing. Our lived experiences are very common to many folks who may not look like us, and having us in leadership in this space and this time is another way of building connection with community in a new way. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, ladies, for introducing yourselves. You know, women of color face unique challenges when seeking elected office. We know it wasn't easy for each of you. We know that you faced and overcame significant barriers to get to where you are. Please share your inspiration for running for office and any unique barriers or inequities that you faced in seeking office. And I'm going to go in reverse order. So Representative Taylor, would you like to go first?
Oh, that's a big one. I've always had an interest in politics and government and such, but I never thought it could be me. I've always lived in white communities, the small college towns. My father is a professor, recently retired from the University of Washington, and lived in these communities where not very many Black people get elected. So it wasn't until 2016 that I saw an election from firsthand. My best friend, Nicole Phelps, was the first Black woman, first Black person to win an open seat for a judicial position, Superior Court judge in the state of Washington, 2016. Wow. This is the same time that Donald Trump won. So clearly our politics in King County is different than what happened everywhere else. But that was a history-making moment that it felt weird. And she won by 83%. So that gave me like a real tangible thing in my own life to hold on to and be inspired to do the things. I still was scared about the most important part, which was fundraising. So we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Representative Morgan, anything to add there?
Sure. I came from a space where raising my family as a single mom, I was serving on boards, volunteering my time, but it really got to the crunch place to where all the systems that I was interacting with my children failed me. And so when the opportunity struck for me to run for an elected office, I took that, and that was a school board director at that entry level. And there was so much that I learned, even just about my own voice and my own knowledge around equity and racism. And it all came to light as soon as I started seeing the data. So that's what really propelled me to run for a higher office with more influence so that I could be a convener of all of our people at the state legislature. In my first try at running for this office, that is something that I said, is that I'm not coming up here to repeat status quo, that I'm here to hold the door open, and I'm not gonna, it's not a screen door, but it's a door stopper. And as you can see, as Representative Taylor has said, the Black Members Caucus has grown from 5 to 9. And so it worked, and I'm so proud.
Yeah, thank you. We are too. Representative Harris-Talley, we'd love to hear from you.
It's a great question. I mean, for me, coming from activism to this circle, it can feel, quite frankly, a little uncomfortable, right, to be in a decision-making role. So I've really focused on what it is to still stand shoulder to shoulder with community through the work. I've been very active in the Black Lives Matter movement, and it's wonderful to be coming in with the expansion of our caucus and the representation of Black members, and find ourselves in this cycle, right? Like what April Berg, Rep. Berg said, we're going to be talking about structural changes to our tax code because, quite frankly, some of it's racist and it falls down disproportionately on Black folks. Right. We're talking about policing justice. The Public Safety Committee, half the bills in there about intersections of how we make sure community is having the response from the police that we deserve and don't have to worry about disproportional violence as Black people. We're having really deep structural conversations with an equity lens on every piece of policy. And it feels good that our neighbors are holding us accountable as Black folks representing them to what that means for the voice on these bills. And so I keep coming back to that, right? And so my inspiration is the folks in the streets, the moms trying to keep it together, the kids trying to get through school in this precarious time online, and making sure we don't lose touch with those realities as we're making these decisions.
Thank you. So I wanted to just drill down on a specific piece of that question around any barriers or inequities that surprised you when you started to run, when you started to seek office. Anything that you can speak to there? Any one of you, please chime in.
It's something that Representative Taylor, matter of fact, the new representatives have said they had an issue with, not an issue, but just making that transition of calling yourself a representative. One way that I made sure I called myself representative is because when I came back after my first session, nobody wanted to address me as Representative Morgan. They wanted me to address me as Melanie Morgan, which is a no, because they don't do that with my white counterparts. So I started off with that first interim. My first name is Representative. My last name is Morgan, right? And then in my second time around, to the dismay of our whole Black community here in Pierce County, I was not endorsed by my local LD. Yet my LD stated that they were all for Black Lives Matter. Yet there were 4 or 5 Black candidates who were running and none of us were endorsed, right? So these are things that you have to, it's reality, it's what's out there. You have people who support you and then you have people who support you, right? So but you keep it pushing, because I knew at the end of the day I won. That's the commitment. That's what I knew inside me, that I'm not running off of 10 people. I am running off of the people who need a voice in Olympia. And so that is what I run on every time. And it works because we are called the people's house. Therefore, we need to be the people's leader.
Yeah.
One of the things that was surprising to me was the resistance from within the Democratic Party. When I first decided to put my name in the hat, I heard from folks who, they will say Black Lives Matter. They will put a poster in their house. They will gentrify communities and, say, hey, they love us. They love our culture, but they don't love the consequences of their actions sometimes. And some folks said to me, literally, you as a Black woman with a law degree, years and years and years and years and years and years and years of public engagement and public experience, cannot win in a purple district. cannot win and be the second Black person to represent at the same time. So April Berg and I both are two representatives who are in districts where both representatives are Black. That's unheard of. Even for one rep, it's interesting. And so to hear from folks who supposedly are supportive to say, no, you can't win because you're Black. What about my qualifications? What about my ability to connect with people? What about my lived experiences most common with folks who are voting right now? Like, what are you talking about? And of course, I didn't listen to them, and I went out and did the thing. And, one of the things that happened with this race is that no one predicted there would be a pandemic. And all the Black women candidates pivoted to helping community first. Helping community. Didn't matter whether you're Black, white, or the other. So if we already had that service mind, that servant leadership orientation, we were connecting with community. We were already showing how we were leaders. So we didn't have to prove ourselves. We were already doing the work before we were elected. And a lot of times when Black women are tapped to do the labor and don't get the accolades.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, I'll chime in too, because Rep. Taylor brought it up that not only are we representing predominantly white districts, having two seatmates that are both African American, but we're in the suburbs, right? We're not in urban areas per se, and that really took people a minute to imagine and to reimagine what representation looked like and what lived experience meant. And I think for me, coming into it, a big barrier was having folks understand that I'm from the community. I've been here 25 years. I've raised all of my children here. I'm in PTA with you. I'm at the grocery store with you. Why couldn't I represent you? And so, and it didn't take, luckily for both, in the 30th and the 44th, it wasn't a huge leap of imagination, but I will say it's probably a barrier to a lot of people. I think for so many years, we were the lonely onlys and so many things in terms of schools and events and activities that, like, imagining more than one of us in spaces of leadership takes a minute for some people, but I think we're beyond the moment where we have to get there and be there and acknowledge the space that we're holding that can hold more than one Black person at a time.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad that you guys persevered, number one, and didn't let other barriers be a barrier for you. So thanks for that lesson for all of us. Any other comment? If not, I'm going to go on to the next question. Anything else?
I was just going to note that, my race was really unique because we had the top two candidates were both Black in district. It's the first race we can find statewide where that had happened, right? So to all my other colleagues' points. And what's interesting, right? When white men are at the top of a ticket and they're the only two, no one asks, right? How will I choose between both these white men? Everyone asked, how could I possibly choose between two Black people, right? I think that, and so I really just want to emphasize this thing of we have to move beyond that, right? In the imagination of, if we're whole, valid people, it shouldn't be hard to differentiate one or another of us from the other as you're making your decision, because we're just as valid as everyone else. So I just want to say that, because it's this new, I think, part of how we have to think when we're hearing the first and onlys. I always say first and a long line after, right? Because that's the goal.
Thank you for showing us on what the new normal can look like. Anyone else? Okay.
Well, wait.
Yes, please.
To give you some historical context, because a lot of times folks will think, wait, 9 Black women, that's an overrepresentation of Black people in the ledge, when at the end of the day, we have 147 legislators, 98 in the House and the other number on the other side in the Senate. And so we're a very small percentage of the overall electorate. And then think about it another way. There have only been 25 Black lawmakers in the state of Washington since its inception. And we were here from the first legislature in 1889 with William Owen Bush, who helped to establish Washington State University. I know there's some cougs out here. I don't do that, but anyways, so we've been here in politics and involved in our community since the beginning, and that's a misnotion that people think, oh, there are no Black people in the Northwest, no Black people in the West. It's either LA or Oakland. No. We're here and we're all over the state. I mean, so that's the thing that we have to understand is like 9 of those members are in this present moment out of the 25 in the entire historical moment of the state's history.
Wow. Thank you. Okay. So we've started to unpack this a little bit, but let's go a little bit deeper. We know that getting elected to office, especially in a state like Washington, where 79% of the state's residents are white, requires nothing less than a Herculean effort. And I'm so glad you guys took it on because you're here. Just wondering, what did you learn? What did you learn that got you to success in your run? And what advice would you share with other people, Black women in particular, who are aspiring to serve on the Hill? Anyone who wants to go first, feel free.
I love this question so much. The thing I was not expecting is that me actually being vulnerable and real about how hard the experience was would resonate so deeply with people. And it's something that I've really tried to hold on to. And I say that because this job requires you to be elbows out in so many ways, right? And we as Black women already are sort of taught that we have to have a composure and a facade and can't be ourselves and be valid. And so that dual piece of what the role is and some of that, and being a Black woman trying to navigate a system that certainly was not built for us, even though it was built on us and our work and our labor and our ideas. I just say that, be real, be vulnerable, be authentic, that we cannot lose, right? If I don't know and I make a mistake, I say I don't know and I made a mistake. And that resonates with people because they want realness in those folks who are making decisions on their behalf. And they want authenticity. And Black people have a unique experience to share. And we have a unique opportunity right now for folks to hear it in a new way. So I was not expecting that. And I feel that I grew personally and in so many ways in my life, and showed something for my children too that I was not expecting in this process.
Awesome, thank you. Anyone else?
I think for me, Rep. Harris-Talley kind of nailed it, right? So much of what we do to get here helps us be better legislators. And for me, it was reaching out to community. It was making sure people knew who I was, what I did, even outside of my own home area, because we have to remember we represent our districts, but we also are here serving the people of the state of Washington. So we need to have impact and influence everywhere and understand what needs are outside of our own communities. And that really did help me get here, and it's helping me serve better. But the other thing I think that we have to remember, especially as Black women, there still is that double standard of you have to do twice as much to get half as far. So really being conscious of making sure that you are sitting on boards, that you are on a bench somewhere doing something, that still matters a lot. And I can't say it enough. Even, if it's at your kid's school, if it's with the YMCA, if it's with the YWCA, if it's in anything, anywhere, do service and learn and use that experience as you move towards your end goal, be that the school board, the water district, the legislature, but do all of it and be really present. And again, I love taking up space where people don't expect us. So, I talk about water districts all the time. I think those are great, important jobs that people have and they're elected to, and I want to see more of us in them. So just be there and be on that bench.
Awesome. Thank you, Rep. Berg. Rep. Morgan, you have something to share?
Yeah, so when I ran the first time, I was a couch surfer. So I was really homeless. And so that's how I think the word is dedicated. Are you dedicated to getting over that finish line? And truly, the situation that I was in should have said, sit down, right? And go work on getting a roof over your head. But somehow I knew deep in my gut that this is the answer to the homelessness, is to win this election. So I gave it all that I had. And the end result for me that I realized what it's all about, money and votes, right? All the rest of the stuff is chatter. For me, it's money and votes. As long as I am calling and I'm knocking, therefore I know I'm secured. Now, I've already served in a first term already. So what was the big surprise on the inside? We don't share a lot of stuff back to the community. Some of it is because it's just so deep and so much. We just can't even communicate it in one conversation. But I think the most surprising thing for me is how long it really takes and all the nuances that are in place to pass one bill. And in 2019, the House of Representatives passed the most amount of bills ever in the state of Washington, and that was over 500 bills. So you can just imagine how much work out of that dedication is there. If I had dedication on the street, then you can best believe I'm going to have dedication as your representative.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
I would love to add that you're going to have a whole lot of character building moments in front of the public. It's okay. You know, for me, I ran and lost. I have tried, when I sat for the bar, I didn't pass, and those were very public things. And so when you're running for office, folks are afraid of making a mistake or not being perfect. You know, as professional women, as folks who are leaders in the community, that perfectionism does hold us back in some ways. You know, perfect can be the enemy of good. And so, you know, you have to face that you will have character building moments in front of others, and that making sure that you have a good support system of folks who will give you good feedback so that that character building moment isn't life-changing or doesn't have you turning away from the thing that you are doing really well for communities. So, you know, being able to confront those challenging times, and then also walking into things that you are uncomfortable with. I wasn't comfortable with fundraising, like I alluded before, but I had to do it on a regular basis because you just can't participate in this process without having money behind you, and then learning how to accept help. And being a good leader of your team and getting your vision out into the community, because if you don't have the resources behind you, you can't communicate with the everyday voters. Not everyone is involved in the political game as you know, folks who are in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They're just living their everyday lives, and so the only time that they may see you is in the voter pamphlet or in a mailer that comes from their union or it comes from their advocacy organization, and you want to make sure you have the resources to connect and communicate with the voters. And so making sure that, you know, number one, have resilience in your character building moments. Number two, making sure that you have a good, strong support circle around you, you know, inside and outside of the political arena. And number three, making sure that you are committed to the necessary things. Because if anyone says you don't need money to run in politics, you may not need your own personal money. You're gonna have to raise it.
Yes.
Can I add something?
Sure.
To this? So I said at the top of the hour here about my own LD not supporting me. So you know what the answer was? I am the co-founder of the Black Democrats of Pierce County. We just went and created our own support then. So if you find yourself in that you got people against you, just go create your own votes.
There you go. It's not there, build it. Yes. Thank you. Okay. I'd like to shift gears and just bring us into the reality of where we are in community today, where there is truly a multi-generational crisis happening. So we know that nationwide, Black Americans are finding it hard to remain hopeful in the face of so many challenges and inequities, from racial justice to disproportionate impacts of COVID-related deaths to economic impacts on Black businesses. Times are really, really tough. And in Washington, Washington is not an exception. We have residents facing a lot of challenges across the state. We know that life expectancy varies according to zip code and ethnicity in our state. What message of hope or what solution would you like to see to restore hope for communities of color in this multi-generational crisis? Feel free to chime in.
Okay, I'll chime in. So I would say hold on. And there's actually a song out there by, God, I just lost my train of thought. There's a song, Sounds of Blackness, sing a song called Hold On. And, you know, we have Black people have been consistently and vigorously fighting this good fight to ensure that we have adequate resources, we have our voices are at the table, that we're being adequately represented. And we are still fighting that fight to get out of this economic bondage that they have had us on since the very day that they released us off of the plantation. We still haven't retained our freedom yet. They released us, but yet have still held us. And the changes here is why I say hold on to the hope. We just said that the Black Members Caucus has grown, right? The Member of Color Caucus has grown. We are a third of our caucus. That would only mean that now we're the conveners. Now we're writing legislation that's going to exactly impact our communities. That's what was needed. We can't expect for allies and accomplices and co-conspirators or whoever wants to do the right thing to carry our stuff. That's why you elected us to be over here, so that we could be the ones who carry what we need and bring that home.
Thank you.
And I will chime in. It's really hard to go after Rep. Morgan. Let me just put it that way, because she tends to like break it all the way down. But that said, in this moment, that is so, without history, it's just, it is an extraordinary moment that we're in, both in the public health crisis, the moment of racial reckoning, where we are economically. It's mind-boggling. That said, where we are as Black women doing our thing in the legislature means we need to pass laws. We need to write bills. We need to write legislation to help get us into a better place. And we need to work together. So Rep. Morgan started last year, the year before, working on a bill to eliminate reduced lunch co-pays. I am happy that I was able to take up that work and get that bill passed off our House floor. Bill 1342 is now in the Senate. And so please call your senators. That's something that's going to make a real change. We're feeding our kids right now, today, all of them in our districts without filling out a form, without saying, raise your hand, give me your income verification, et cetera, et cetera. We're getting them fed. We have to keep feeding our kids. So the goal of that bill that Rep. Morgan wrote, that she, you know, it's a team sport in the legislature. That's why I love the House. And I was able to sponsor at this session to say, when our kids come back, if they're on reduced price lunch, they should not have to pay the 40 cents. That's the state's obligation. It's a moral thing, but that's what we can do. We can keep finding those moral challenges, those bills that are absolute imperatives to get across the finish line, so that after this crisis, we will come out stronger than we went in, so that there will be a racial reckoning and racial justice will be had. And I'm going to kind of flip this over to Rep. Taylor, because I know there's just exciting bills that are going on in that space around racial justice and criminal justice reform.
All right, so yes, and so the Black Members Caucus, we are sponsoring or leading the efforts on so many critical bills that are in the racial equity space. And most importantly, there's a series of bills around police accountability and police reforms that always need your support. I just had my list right here. And so it's very important for the community to be engaged in the process and reminding our senators that they need to support these bills, because they're now moving from the House over to the Senate side. We're hearing the dog whistles, we're hearing all the direct racist comments from individuals in the House and now over in the Senate around why we can't have police accountability. I mean, if you think about it, Black Lives Matter. Full stop. Full stop. And so, if you have activists, we're in a historical moment where there's never been international, global peace rallies in the way that we've seen the Black Lives Matter rallies. We must do something now in our legislature around what the communities have said. I have seen people stand in protest as a solo in Okanagan County. Okay, do you know where that is? That is up near Canada. And there are very few Black folks there, but they are there. And it's not just Black folks. I mean, you think about how many people of color and marginalized people who have been impacted by police violence. We must do something now. The time is now. And so when you think about the things that the Black Members Caucus and other Black legislators are working on, they uplift the entire community. If you think about when you uplift marginalized people, you uplift the whole community. And Black people, whether you perceive us as successful, because there is Kamala Harris in the vice presidency, and you had Barack Obama as the president, and then you think we're in a post-racial society. No, all you had to do was look over your shoulder to see who your cousin, your neighbor, someone who's struggling through things that they just simply don't have access to the resources. Right. Options and opportunity. That's what we're looking for to participate in the American dream. That shouldn't be a civil right. It's a human right. It's a human right.
Thank you. So Representative Harris-Talley, I want to go to you next, but with a slightly different question, if I may. And if you want to weave in something else there, feel free. But I just want to talk a little bit about Black Girl Magic and get your feelings on that. Black women have been at the fore of the social justice movement throughout American history. And many experts credit Black women for securing the Biden-Harris victory. Some attribute it to massive voter mobilization efforts, and some attribute it to Black Girl Magic. So why do you think Black women have been the most historically loyal voting bloc?
It's a great question, and it's a great reflection. The most pivotal shift in our democracy was when Black people got the right to vote in stop period, right? And the birth of the civil rights movement that the Black Lives Matter movement is standing on the shoulders from in so many ways is built from that reality, right? We live in a country that it's about a more perfect union. If we assume we have perfection now, we're not going to get to where we need to go. And Black women have literally birthed, cared for every generation and aspect of this country. And we have to reinsert that it is Black girl magic, Black femme magic, Black women who've been the cornerstone of stability in this country. And I say that because in the days of slavery, we were literally raising every child in this country, literally, every child, not our own as much as we wanted to, because we were forced to raise other people's children. Don't believe this revisionist thing that women came into the workplace in the 50s. Black women have been in the workplace our entire set of generations. The ideas, the very ways in which we show up in the world, whole, caring, clear, honest, authentic, is now being embraced more and more of the way that folks identify what humanity looks like. We're the global majority. We are the folks who have been holding this all together. And to your point, we saw literally Black women save this entire country and democracy in November. The decisions, the work that had been made, that was not the work of one cycle. That was the work of generations of Black women who always held fast, stood beside, waited their quote unquote turn to have the extension of rights when women got the right to vote and Black people got the right to vote and Black women still had to wait. They had their feet on the ground, their hands on a door, making sure they were organizing for a decade so that we could have the margins of having the first Black senator that we have had come into the legislature. We now have it set up on the federal level where the first Black woman vice president is now going to be the deciding vote in every vote in the Senate because of the margins of the Senate. These are women who have stayed in the roots of the South despite the racism that has been there and the brutality and violence of their children. And for me and mine, when we really sit with our own histories, my own grandmother did not have the right to vote and move freely and marry who she wanted throughout most of her lifetime. These are not generation removed ideas. These are very clear people in our family we still talk to and know, right? Ruby Bridges is still with us. That little girl who walked into a public school is now an elder, making sure that never happens again. So that to me is the legacy of it. We are caregivers, we are lovers, not only of ourselves and our families and our local communities, but everyone here and willing to do the work to get us all there. And I want more folks to recognize that, elevate it, and give us the due respect we deserve for it.
Yeah, thank you. You know, our time is winding down, and boy, do I have a lot more I want to chat about. I'm going to put out there one final question for our panel, and I'll invite you to answer it however you want, or if there's something else you want to share today, now is your moment. You know, what you all have achieved is just remarkable, and we're so proud to see so many Black women in office and representing us and shattering glass ceilings in Washington. We ask you, please, just if there's some piece of legislation that you haven't spoken about yet that you want to share about, please tell us about it and how we can help you. And anything else you want to share. So why don't we start, we'll go alphabetically, starting with Representative Berg.
Thank you so much, Loria. And I'm just going to say thank you to everyone who's watching this, because I'm just so happy that you're putting this event on, and letting us highlight a bill at the end is like the perfect way to end it. So the bill that I want to highlight is House Bill 1273. It is my menstruation equity bill. And it is truly my baby. And so what this bill would do would provide menstruation products in all educational settings for menstruating individuals. So that's your K through 12 schools, both public and private. That's your community and technical colleges, and that's your four-year private and public college and university institutions. So that means you will never have to worry about being caught unprepared in those settings. And just to give you an idea of why this is such a huge issue and so necessary is that it really does impact the learning of menstruating individuals when they have to worry about that. And I'll just land it on a story that was told during testimony on my bill. It has not hit the floor yet. So this is one that I'm going to need help getting it to the floor. But a person testifying talked about how she was in a standardized test, taking this test, and her flow came. And she wanted to get up to go to her backpack to get a pad and take care of that. And she couldn't. She didn't have access to her backpack because that would have been cheating. And that was against the rules. So she had to sit through that test on the first day of her period with no protection, clearly not concentrating on that high stakes standardized test. So that's why this bill is important, so that all of our menstruating individuals can be educated adequately and fully. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Representative Harris-Talley.
I'm going to mention two bills, and thank you for letting us talk this through. One is House Bill 1156 for equity in local elections and ranked choice voting. It's one of many tools that we need to start having our Washington State Voting Rights Act move into effect so local communities can decide how to get closer to equity in their local elections. And then also House Bill 1494. This is my baby. I'm going to be continuing to work on it in the Finance Committee. It's a brand new idea, but it's an anti-displacement property tax exemption, working to get our upside down tax code right side up by giving everyday working families some relief off their property taxes. But it's also about housing justice and making sure that if in the house that you live in, you can get up to a $250,000 property tax exemption off of your property taxes, so you can continue to stay in that home and not have to worry that you're going to be displaced due to your inability to pay your property taxes. And for Black folks, brown folks, elders, so many, that's the game changer of us being able to stay in our communities and fighting gentrification. So really excited to be with you all today. I know all of these ideas intersect with what you all hold dear, and thank you for having us.
Thank you. Representative Morgan.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to wrap this up from that last question in that shattering that glass ceiling truly is happening. As I was a freshman elected as a deputy majority floor leader. That is unheard of in practically any state legislature. But that's why it's so important of these pieces of legislation that we're passing today, especially the one that is my baby, and that's House Bill 1016, and that is celebrating Juneteenth as a state paid holiday. This is my second time running this bill. It is ready to come to the floor, so please stay tuned on tvw.org when that hits the floor for some floor debate. We need you to write into your senators before we even get there to ensure that they understand that this is not about a holiday as they're trying to place it. This is about reconciliation. This is about apology. This is about doing the right thing. And my hope is that this is not a celebration where we're going to be segregated. I hope that this is a celebration that the whole state of Washington will come together and say that we are so glad that we are not practicing the atrocity of chattel slavery. Every American should be celebrating Juneteenth in that perspective, just as we celebrate July 4th. Thank you. I'm so thankful that you have invited me here today. I'm out of breath with that one. That was a good one.
Thank you. So glad you're here.
Hey, Black Lives Matter.
Yes. And Representative Taylor, we'll give you the last word.
Amen, amen, amen. Okay. All right. So I think one of the things that we really need to recognize is that there are buckets of bills that are in different spaces. And it's hard to say one bill, one baby, because we have multiple babies. And I can't choose just one, but I'm going to go into two buckets, housing and broadband. Okay, they may not seem like they are important to each other, but they are important to the overall thing. The House Democratic Caucus has 4 priorities: racial equity, COVID response, economic recovery, and environmental justice. And in part of our economic recovery, we must make sure that people remain in their homes so they can participate in their education, they can participate in their jobs, if they are able to work from home or look for a job, because we know some people aren't working, so that they can stay safe and housed. I mean, everyone needs to stay housed. And the challenge that we have right now, we already had a housing crisis before the pandemic. And so we need to make sure that the series of housing bills that are coming through, including House Bill 1236, once we deploy funds to help with rental assistance, we got to make sure that those folks are not evicted right around the corner. So that would be a bailout for folks who already have the means to keep their housing. So we want to make sure that the tenants are protected. So House Bill 1236 with just cause eviction. And then, there's a series of bills that are related to broadband and universal access to the internet, and that means making sure that we get the last mile. So some parts of our community, even in the 30th district, a suburban district in King County, some of us only have DSL. Some of us only have devices that are a phone. So how do you imagine participating in your education if you have a phone and you have 3 kids at home, okay, and none of you have a laptop? So we have folks who lack devices. They lack access to the internet itself, and then they can't afford the internet. So we're seeing it become a bipartisan support for broadband and internet access as an essential service, just like water, sewer, gas, and light. So we really need to move forward in advancing broadband services and internet services for our communities, health equity, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. Wow, ladies, this has been amazing. We're out of time, and I'm so sad about that because there's so much more that I want to hear from you guys about. But I want to thank you for joining us today. Please promise us that you'll stay in touch with us and come back for more discussion. I want to just put up on the screen for those of you who are aspiring for office one day, we put together a resource list for you. That resource list will be available in the follow-up materials that we'll send around following this event. We also wanted to highlight a few things coming up on our Black History Month calendar. First, Unlearning Systemic Racism, happening next Wednesday. There's still a few slots if you want to register, but don't wait because this will sell out. There's some amazing nationally renowned speakers who will be joining that, including our own local Dr. Ben Danielson from the University of Washington and board member, YMCA, that is, board member Dr. Robin Martin of the Gates Foundation. Also, coming up on February the 26th, we will be hosting a learning opportunity around COVID-19. And we will have joining us Dr. Stephen Wallace from Fed Hutch. Come learn. This is important for all of us. And also on the 26th, we hope that you will join us in showing solidarity with the Black community on We Were Black Day. So please participate. And then last but not least, just a few reminders to continue your own journey. The Y is on a journey towards becoming an anti-racist organization, and there's room for everybody. Join us in this work. Join us in our Black History Month activities. We'll have other Heritage Months throughout the year that you're welcome to join. And we will also be sharing with you our post-event survey. And we hope that you'll take a moment to complete us and share some things that you'd like to hear from the Y about as you continue your journey. And with that, we're at time. I'll just bid you all a great day. Please mask up. Please be informed about COVID-19 and the vaccine. And when your time comes, my hope is that you will have learned and take the direction of the experts. The experts are urging all of us to take the vaccine when we are eligible. Be well, everyone, and make it a great day. Goodbye.